Wide receiver is a position of need for the Packers in the draft. Join us today as we do a deep dive on wide receivers who could be Green Bay Packers and the ones that are off the radar.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Thank you everybody for coming back and taking a listen to us. I'm one of your two co-hosts. My name is Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. Just know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Of course, we are on the socials as well. That should be on the banner, but I'm at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olson Jord. So, as I alluded to in the beginning, we're going to be taking a much deeper dive into the wide receiver prospects that will be on the Packers' radar. Some that could have a little bit of caution to them, and then some that probably have fallen completely off because of multiple red flags. So, with that, we just wanted to do a quick Packers free agent roundup, though, real quick here, just to get you guys up to speed. Eric Stokes ended up going to the Las Vegas Raiders. He says nothing's open after 10 p.m. in Green Bay. He's probably not too far off from that. A.J. Dillon, our beloved mayor of Door County, ends up going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Corey Ballantyne ended up signing with the Colts. Josh Myers, and maybe you can touch on this for a second, end up going to the Jets on an extraordinarily cheap contract. I think the Packers were done with Josh Myers. Eric Wilson ends up signing with the Vikings, and then the big bruiser run stuffer TJ Slayton ends up signing, I believe it was a 2-year deal with the Bengals. So just real quick, Jordan, any thoughts there on some of that free agent news?
Nope. I mean, we anticipated to move on from all or most of these guys. I mean, I think the only two that we really had some strong interest in and maintaining or retaining would be, Eric Wilson and TJ Slayton for the right price. Sad to see Eric Wilson go back to the division rival Minnesota Vikings, but he's kind of returning home because he spent way more time in Minnesota than he did in Green Bay. So I guess you're the enemy again now. Josh Myers, I mean, he signed like a $3.5 million contract. At that rate, I would have loved to try to keep him for depth purposes and continuity on this line. But clearly the Packers drew a line in the sand, and regardless of the price, or maybe they just upset Josh Myers and he wasn't willing to come back even for a little bit more money than that. I mean, that could happen too, because they put out there that they were ready to move on, probably anticipating a bigger contract. A.J. Dillon, I'm sure he'll be back in Door County. Probably going to keep a house there. He loves Door County, but hopefully he can get right. It sucks to see him go to a team like the Eagles, which is probably going to be a primary NFC rival for a while here now, but we'll see how he lands. I could spend a lot of time on that because we got a lot of other great things to talk about in terms of the wide receiver conversation and how the Packers might address that in the draft. So just a quick reminder, in case you're living under a rock, but the Packers' current wide receiver depth chart looks like this. We have Jaden Reed, our outstanding slot receiver, although he did fall asleep a little bit late in the end of the season. We have some questions about his ability to beat man coverage. Hopefully he's working that in the offseason. Romeo Doubs, hands extraordinaire, but hopefully he's healthy and doesn't have any more concussion issues moving into the last year of his contract. Dontavian Wicks, we know the story there. He has a lot more to give, but he needs to work on his drops this offseason. Bo Melton, I think, is that great fourth or fifth wide receiver in this room, along with Malik Heath, which is an excellent blocker. And then we know that Christian Watson is going to spend at least probably about 10 weeks on the IR, and we hope to get him back. But we'll see if he still has that speed coming off of that knee injury when he returns. So we've been working to, Rob, did you have anything to add to that before we jump into our prospect list?
Nope, nothing to add here.
Okay, so this is our first time doing an episode like this where we're going to kind of cover all of or most of the prospects available to us in the draft. So this is a little bit of a work in progress for us. We hope that we find a good flow with this, but we hope that there's some really good information for you out there as we go through these prospects. So kind of how this works for us is we have some incomplete profiles. Hopefully we'll have some updates on them later on. We've got some guys on our red list, guys who we don't think are going to be Packers. We've got some guys in a next tier, which maybe have one or two flags, but I wouldn't totally rule them out. The guys in our second tier or our gold tier of the list, which maybe only have one deficiency or red flag to look out for. Otherwise, they meet all of the Packers' thresholds and criteria. Would not be surprised to see them as Packers. And then our full tier one green guys, which I think that's really the short list of guys to look at from the top to the bottom of the draft. So, guys, right now, go, yeah, Rob.
I was going to say, so you just want to give them a rundown too of the thresholds and some of the criteria or data that we're going off of?
Yeah, that's really good. So, in terms of the Packers, the things that we know or we think we know, right? Because the Packers never publicly say that these are the thresholds that we operate off of. But wide receivers, typically for the Packers, shall be greater than 6 feet tall. They have once in a while drafted a guy that's 5'11", but they're not drafting any guys shorter than that. More than 195 pounds. Run a sub 4.55 40 time, and have a sub 7-second 3 cone. We think that those are the things that they care about the most. A couple other things, they love their Senior Bowl prospects. So guys that meet all of those things or close to those things and have been to the Senior Bowl, good chance that that means something to the Packers too at that point in time. So guys with incomplete athletic profiles, and maybe we'll know more later, but mostly back end of the draft guys right now. Will Shepard from Colorado, Efton Chisholm III from Eastern Washington. Although I really liked his tape from the Senior Bowl, I would not be surprised to see him as a round 7 pick or a UDFA for the Packers. Kyron Lacey from LSU and Jackson Meeks from Syracuse are kind of incomplete at the moment. Going down from guys that we don't think are going to be Packers that have been disqualified, Xavier Rapresto from Miami. He's only 5'10". He's too short to be a Green Bay Packer. Kobe Hudson from UCF. He had a terrible relative athletic score. So from what we have in his testing, is also only 193 pounds. So he's a little bit on the lighter side. His 5.82 RAS score will probably disqualify him from going to the Packers in approximately the 4th round. Ricky White, a prospect from UNLV. He's too light and had a poor RAS score as well. And Theo Weiss Jr. from Mizzou. He's a little on the light side and had a really bad RAS score of only like 4.33. So those are the guys that we've disqualified from our draft list at this point in time. And I'm going to throw it over to Rob to get into our list of guys who we think still have a chance to be a Packer, but have a few red flags along the way.
Yeah, so the first one up on that list, projected around round 5, but Nick Nash, San Jose State, does meet the height, 6'2", 203, but a 6.63 RAS score, 4.57 in the 40-yard dash. Definitely has a lot of explosive plays to him. Poor vertical too, so it's a possibility, but most likely will end up not being a Packer on the Packers' radar. Antoine Wells Jr. from Ole Miss, 6'0", 201, but again, too, a really bad relative athletic score of 5.62, ran a 4.58 40. Kadan Prather out of Maryland, 6'3", 210, again, 7.4 RAS with a 4.46 40 time. And then Samuel Brown out of Miami, 6'2", 195, so has the height, a little bit light, right there on that threshold, and ran a 4.56 40, projected somewhere around the 7th round. So with
Hey, Rob,
this,
before you jump into the
yeah,
next tier there, Nick Nash, too, I think he meets a lot of criteria for people. The other thing that I think that will scare the Packers off is his age. I don't know what his age is, but he's played like 6 years of college football. I'd have to imagine that he's like at least 23 years old already, which totally wouldn't bar them from thinking about him in the 5th round, but it's just kind of another tick mark there. And we're talking about RAS scores. I think it's no secret that the Packers are seeking guys who have a RAS score of greater than 8.0 and have, on exception, dipped out to the 7s or the 6s later on. Unless we're talking about guys like Amari Cooper or Jay Sternberger in round 3, those guys were obviously bust, and their RASs were well below 8, so not totally surprised.
yeah, and when they dip into that, right, too, it didn't end up working out too well with them, especially earlier on in the draft. So Yep, those good points there. All right, so moving on to our maybe only one red flag, but do have a lot of potential upside and have maybe some merit to maybe go to the Packers. But Luther Burden, the third from Mizzou, still pretty young at about 21 years, a little bit on the shorter side for 5'11". He does meet the weight requirements of 208. Did run a 4.41 40 time and he's one of the only few prospects these days that does run a 3-cone drill still, 6.84. But
Mm-hmm.
um, again, too, I don't know if he really, for someone, makes sense for the Packers, being in the slot there, too. A lot of competition. We already have, obviously, Jaden Reed over there to be able to help us. So I don't know. Any thoughts on Luther Burden? I know there's some people that really love him and some people really hate him. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
on that side of maybe not thinking he's the best for the.
Yeah, not really. I mean, he did a good job covering him. I just don't think he has a lot of outside versatility. I think he's going to succeed in the NFL in the slot. And I just think with Jaden Reed entering year 3, even if he slides to the Packers, and there's a good chance he goes before the Packers, that's not the type of wide receiver they need to draft in the first round, and doubt that he falls late into the second. So more so than anything, besides him being a little short, that's kind of why he's on our second tier list of probably not guys that the Packers are going to draft, just based on when he's going to go on the draft alone. But yeah, next on this list is Matthew Golden. Obviously, he lit up the scoreboard with his 40 time at the NFL Combine of 4.29. So extreme speed, something the Packers
Mm-hmm.
are extremely interested in. Um, but my gripe with him is that he's a little short and he's a little light. He like technically just kind of meets the thresholds of where Packers have dipped into before. I don't know if he's going to be available at pick 23, but I'm also not sure that he's the kind of guy that the Packers are going to take in the first round, because he is not typically the 6'3", 215-pound prospect the Packers take early in the draft. A couple great things about him, though, outside of his speed, is that he has return kicks. So he's got kick return upside. He's got great ball skills and footwork. So if the Packers did take him in the first round, or man, if he fell to the second, which is not going to happen, I would not hate the pick. So
Yeah, and as my bold prediction too, a couple videos ago, that he'll be the first wide receiver taken off the board. I will emphasize bold prediction on that one, but definitely can offer a lot of speed, right? And it's not completely out, but in our second tier. So
mm-hmm.
Jalen Noel from Iowa State, 22 and a half. He is a little bit on the shorter side at 5'10", 194. So really, really close there. But his relative athletic score, 9.71. So definitely meets that. And his 40 time is 4.39. And then, again, one of the only few prospects on here, too, that ran a 3-cone drill at 6.82. So that's good. Again, like Jordan was talking about, some really good pros for him. Kick return upside. Um, was at the Senior Bowl. Did really good at the Senior Bowl. Definitely stood out there too. So there's definitely some potential here for
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Noel to be able to come to the Packers.
Yeah, and I mean, he just like showed out at the combine. I mean, he showed that he's an excellent athlete. I think my concern here is that he is just redundant with Jaden Reed again. I think that if we didn't have Jaden Reed on this roster, I would be much more interested in Jalen Noel in the second round or third round than Luther Bolden or Bird in the third, to be honest. Some really good things I've heard about him, though, like his level of details, the fact that he shows up 30 minutes before every practice or workout. He's had an excellent vert test, so even though despite his height, he can go up and he can win the ball at the point of attack. I don't think he's going to be drafted by the Packers because of the redundancy, but if they did take him in the second or third round, I think we would have gotten a hell of a wide receiver prospect and somebody who can help us on special teams as well. Savion Williams, he's a guy that I really like, minus one glaring thing. He's 6'5", 225, and ran a 4.48 40. We don't have the rest of his measurables, and I also don't know how old he is. The biggest glaring thing to me why I would be hesitant on drafting him is that he has really bad hands, and I'm not sure. And that's kind of showed in college. I think it showed a little bit up in some of his scouting combine and stuff. And we've heavily litigated this before. We're not sure we need to add one more guy with bad hands to this wide receiver room where that's kind of an issue already. But Savion Williams is kind of from a measurement standpoint. He's a Packer. He's kind of guy.
Yeah, Pat Bryant from Illinois here. He projected around the fifth round. 22 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds. Meets those requirements. An 8.19 RAS score, but he is on the slower side. He ran a 4.61, and I think that's one of his biggest kind of cons. But looks smooth. Ran a really good gauntlet drill. So this is somebody who, like we've touched on from before, but easily could be maybe a possible fifth or sixth round projected Packer pick.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I really like him. I just maybe at his pro day he'll run into the 4.5s, and maybe that will change our mind. Even like a 4.58 would change our mind a little bit. Dontavian Wicks did run a 4.61 as well. So I mean, as a fifth round selection, there are some parallels there. So late guys now, two guys who might go in the seventh round or even be UDFAs. Rock Taylor from Memphis, 6'3", 215. At a 7.11 RAS, but you're talking about a seventh round selection, ran a 4.4940. I like him as a bigger bodied option late in the draft. And then Isaiah Naylor from Nebraska. He's 6'4", 218. He's huge. I mean, you talk about a guy who's like nearly built like a tight end. He ran a 4.43. My biggest questions about him are his agilities. He didn't run any agilities that I'm aware of, and he was a little choppy in the gauntlet drill. So maybe really help you in the blocking game. Maybe, be able to stretch the field a little bit, but probably not a super versatile guy in his route running and stuff, if I had to imagine from a little bit of combine watching. So let's jump into the good stuff. Let's Rob, why don't we'll start from the top again, round one prospects down, but who are our guys that are kind of full green, full Packers-y guys that we should really be looking for in the draft?
Yeah, so projected round one, so this definitely means that the Packers will not take him, but if they do end up deciding to go and get a wide receiver in the first round, Emike Egbuke out of Ohio State. I don't think any shocker here, right? 22 years old, 6'1", 205 pounds. There's not a RAS score on him, and he did not perform the 40 or have a 3-cone drill. But, if anybody, I think most of us here are Wisconsin fans, right, or watch the Big Ten, so know his play here the last few years, but really good kick return upside, very good route running. It seems like all those Ohio State wide receivers have really good route runners and has excellent hands. So I don't think that the Packers will go ahead and end up taking him, and I'm still a firm believer until I see it, I'll believe it. The Packers taking a wide receiver in the first round, but he will definitely go. I'd be shocked if he does not go in the first round. So
He won't be available at in the late second round. I mean, maybe if the Packers traded back and he was available in the 30s, or traded up and he was available like pick 35 or something, maybe. I could see him falling back that far, but really no further. We don't have a 40 time on him, but he was recorded to run a 4.3 in high school and unofficially in college as well. So, anything short of a 4.4 40 time, I would be surprised on. So, he's going to have the speed, and he's been healthy. So next guy on the list, Alec Ayomanor from Stanford. And these aren't really in preference. Like, we're going to talk about Jaden Higgins in a minute here. So I'm not saying that Ayomanor is a better prospect for us than Higgins, but he's on the list. Ayomanor, 6'2", 210, has a 9.56 RAS, ran a 4.44 40. He's somebody who's shown to be a really good route runner, somebody who can kind of stack bodies behind him in the vertical game. I think he's kind of a sleepy pick for the Packers and somebody who could definitely fall back into the 50s. So look out, watch some more tape on him. I'm certainly going to be watching a little bit more tape on him, but he's a Packer-y kind of dude, Packer-Z kind of dude.
Jack Besh out of TCU, one of the darlings too for the Senior Bowl. So obviously he did go to the Senior Bowl if you weren't watching that. But 22 years old, 6'2", 215 with a 9.46 RAS. Did not run the 40 time or do the 3-cone drill, but has really, really good hands. That's the thing that stood out to me. He looked like he's a really good route runner. I think you could do some really cool things with him. And he did end up having a very smooth gauntlet drill too as well. So look out for him and around the second round, maybe end second round, I think could be a good Packers type.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins, I think everybody's wide receiver darling number one right now that we all believe is just going to fall to us in the second round, and the Packers will watch that name go by and be drafted by the Vikings or somebody immediately following. But, I mean, what's not to like about Jaden Higgins? He's from Iowa State. He's 6'4", 215, had a 9.85 RAS score, ran a 4.47 40, so ran even faster than we expected him to at the combine. Had a great gauntlet drill. He's proven to win in the intermediate and deep passing game. I think he's one of the best, second round wide receiver prospects that's a Packers type in a long time. And I really think that he would diversify this receiver room. I love him, and we've talked about him before, so I don't know that we need to gush over him too much. But look out for Jaden Higgins.
Yeah, and if the Packers do not trade back up in the second round, would you be confident saying Jaden Higgins will be gone?
Yeah, I think he's going to go somewhere in the 40s. I mean, maybe like pick 42, pick 49, but I don't know he's going to be there at pick 55.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so Jalen Royals out of Utah State, projected around the third round, but 22 years old, 6 foot 205, 9.27 RAS, 4.42. So really good route running, had a very, very good Senior Bowl. So he was at the Senior Bowl. Very good hands, pretty fast too. I thought he was faster on his playing tape than what he actually did run in the 40 time. But maybe some cons too. And for the Packers is, can he play on the outside at all, right? So don't want to be able to draft him, have him come in and be redundant with some of our other current wide receivers and their skill sets.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also some questions about him in the blocking game as well. And we got to make sure to add that to our notes here on our spreadsheet. And the great thing about the spreadsheet is, I don't know, Rob and I, we might make this available to our viewers in the future. So if you're interested in this and having a visual, if you're a visual kind of person, I'm not sure yet. Put it in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing, and maybe we'll see about making that available later on as we approach the draft. But yeah, Trey Harris from Ole Miss is somebody that we like. He's a little bit older, but if we get him in the third round, I don't mind taking a 23-year-old in the third round. 210 had a 9.02 RAS, ran a 4.54, which is plenty of speed for his type of game. He's a bigger bodied possession receiver, so I would have no problems with that at all. But if you haven't watched any Trey Harris tape, go out and watch him. I think that he would be a steal and a great fit for the Packers in the third rounds.
Torrey Horton projected around the fourth round out of Colorado State. Shameless plug, go out and check out our most recent mock draft where I think we actually ended up taking him in the fourth round.
Mm-hmm.
No age on him, or at least none that we could find, but 6'3", 196, 9.71 RAS, ran a 4.41 40 time. Does have some good punt return upside. So I think that there's plenty here to like with Torrey Horton, and really good value getting him in the fourth round.
Mm-hmm. Getting a little deeper, there's going to be 3 more guys that we're going to cover on the green list, but Isaac T-Slaw from Arkansas, he's a guy that I just kind of recently came on to, but I think he's a great fit for the Packers in a number of ways in the 5th or 6th round. 6'4", 217 pounds, excellent athlete with what he's tested, 9.92 RAS, ran a 4.43 40. And had a 6.85 3-cone. So he's one of the only athletes that has a full athletic profile that we know the Packers care about. And on top of that, he had a pretty fluid and impressive gauntlet. We keep mentioning that. To me, that drill means something. I like to see the wide receivers catch the ball out in front of them, stay down the line and show explosion between those that catches. And he surprised me there. One thing about him is he did have some limited playing time in his career. He was a late Senior Bowl add. But if we're talking about adding him in the 5th or 6th round, I really like his athleticism and potential. So look out for Isaac Tisla from Arkansas.
Dante Thornton Jr. From Tennessee. We don't have an age on him, though, but 6'5", very, very tall, 214 pounds, a 9.8 RAS score, ran a 4.3. So there is a lot speed, yes, and that's obviously if you're all not living under a rock, but that's the one thing that the Packers, I would be thinking that they need, and they definitely need for this offense, right? Coming from a fan perspective, I'd be shocked if they weren't looking for that in this draft. But ran a really nice gauntlet too. Shows he's able to catch the ball, catch it consistently, while still being able to maintain his good route running. So, and again, too, there's another prospect that we may or might not have drafted in our most recent mock draft, and absolutely one of our darlings. We love him at the end there towards the 5th round.
Last guy. And for all of the true Wisconsin Knights that are Packers fans listening to this, you'll know the name, but Chimere Dike, who now, who ended up playing for Florida in the end, but spent 3 years with the Wisconsin Badgers. He's a sneaky, really good fit for the Packers in the 6th or 7th round, 6'1", 195. So he just kind of meets the weight requirement. But 9.65 RAS score, 4.34 40. So that's definitely adding that speed element. Being a Badgers fan, I did not know that he truthfully carried that kind of speed. I expected him to be a 4.4 guy, but 4.34 is really impressive. And 6.82 3-cones. So he shows those agilities that you like. He has experience returning punts. Looked pretty good in the gauntlet drill again. I think he's somebody really to look out for late for the Packers that could be a fit, especially if we don't address the wide receiver or speed part of the wide receiver position early in this draft. So that kind of brings us to the end of our prospect list. Just to give you our green light guys again really quick. Emeka Mbuke, Alec Ayomanor, Jack Besh, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Royals, Trey Harris, Torrey Horton, Isaac Tisla, Dante Thornton Jr., and Chimere Dike. So that is our short list as of right now, unless we get other information to either add or remove guys from that list. All right, fans. So thanks for being here for this. Hopefully this was informative for you. We really like going through these prospects and being informed about who we think the Packers will and will not select. And of course, we're always going to get surprised by something that Brian Gutekunst did in the NFL draft, for better or for worse. But we have more great content every Wednesday and Saturday. This is the first part of this series. We started with the wide receivers. Next, we're going to hit edge, and we're going to hit our other position groups as we get closer and closer to the draft. So make sure to share this with your family, friends, and other Packers fans. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe, like, let us know what you think. You can connect with us on X. As Rob said earlier in the show, he's at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and I'm at Olson Jord. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Pack.
Been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.